G'day gorgeous podcast listener. This is episode 2 and the title of this week's podcast is Why We Have Self-Toxic Talk Going On and Where in the World Does It Come From? So before we jump into this podcast, which is going to be packed with useful information that you can jot down and implement into your life immediately, make sure you have your companion journal with you at all times. I'm always writing things in my journal because writing creates brand new neural pathways, which helps us create a new life by design that we're looking for, or create a wonderful new chapter of our life. And of course, as I always say, a nice cup of tea and be present, because this podcast, as I said a moment ago, is going to be packed with information and stories that relate. This podcast is real, it's raw, and it is relatable for everyday women. And as I said, you're listening to G'day Gorgeous, and this is the podcast that empowers women for life. And this is the place for women who want more from their life and who dare to live their dreams. The podcast is brought to you by gdaygorgeous.com and hosted by me, Amanda Jane Clarkson. So, G'day Gorgeous shows women how to break free from their limiting beliefs, reach their full potential, and step into a world packed full of joy and abundance and new possibility, beginning right where you are. And I've got to ask, who doesn't want a world of possibility, abundance, more peace, more harmony, just so that when you wake up in the morning, you feel good about your life instead of feeling anxious and panicked of what's going to happen. So who is Amanda Jane? Well, if you haven't yet met me, I am a best-selling author. I'm an inspirational speaker around the world and a wealth and lifestyle coach to women inside my community. And I'm also just recently created and written my brand new book, From Frustrated to Fabulous for Women, which is an inspirational guide for women who dare to live their dreams. And this book was written from my heart to all the women out there who crave for more in their life, and they know that they deserve it at a deep level. So what I truly love doing, though, more importantly, is helping women from all over the world, everyday women, go from feeling frustrated in their life in one of the 7 areas to feeling fabulous and successful, because I believe each and every one of you out there deserve to be successful and feel fulfilled in all the areas of your life. Now, these are the 7 areas that I'm going to be covering as the show rolls on in time. Love, your health, relationships, money, which I love to talk about and not many people do, your vocation, which is your job, your career, and your business, happiness, and the most important, personal growth. So thinking about those 7 areas of your life right now, which area, jot down in your journal or your piece of paper, your notepad, what have you got in front of you there? Which of those 7 areas of your life would you say that you're feeling mostly frustrated in at the moment? You feel empty. You've got self-toxic talk going on. You don't feel good enough. You're not quite where you'd hoped you'd be. And I understand that because, being a woman myself, I've got, a long history where I've had so many different jobs, started 14 different businesses. I understand the journey and what it's like to wake up in the morning and not love my life, not feel fulfilled, not feel energetic, not feel like getting out of bed. Those days when you just want to pull the doona up over your face and pretend the day hasn't started. I totally get it. So what are we talking about this week on the podcast? We're going to be talking about, as I said, toxic self-talk. Where does it come from? Why do we all have it going on? And I think we'd all agree that toxic self-talk is debilitating. It can really hold you back in time. It can stop you from going out there, finding that love of your life that you may be hoping to attract into your life. It really stops us from having fulfilling relationships, finding that right job or the career, or holding us back from starting a business that would be amazing for us to start if that's what our purpose was, or if that's what we really wanted to do. Money is a big problem. Why do 95% of people die broke? Where is all the money? And why do only 5% of people in the world hold on to the most money? I mean, who doesn't want it, right? But why haven't we all got some? Well, gorgeous, that goes back to our toxic self-talk, the way we feel about ourselves, maybe our upbringing, which I'm going to be talking about in a moment. And what we're going to be doing is today talking about love, which is one of the areas that I really love to talk about. And that goes along with my Live Now Freedom Formula, which I teach to my ladies inside my own community, that helps them go from living a life of frustration to a fabulous life filled with happiness and success. So just to give you a little bit of a background, the toxic self-talk. Now, I hope you've got your pen, girlfriend, and you're writing notes, because I don't know a single person, in fact, I don't believe there's a single person out there who does not have self-toxic talk going on in their life in some form or another. Now, I think about me. I was one of the worst out there, and I'm sure you will relate to this story in some form or another. So as I'm sharing a little bit about my story, put yourself in my shoes and ask yourself, oh my God, did I feel like that then? What was my story? I came from I went to a school of all girls back in the day. I was born in Tasmania, one of 5 children. And I went to a girls' Catholic school, and who wouldn't agree that sometimes girls can be really quite bitchy? And I certainly was not popular. I wasn't pretty enough. I was really skinny because I was a runner when I was a young kid. And I really struggled through school. I mean, I don't know if you can relate to this. You might be one of those fabulous smart ladies or guys, but for me, I really struggled in school. In fact, I failed every subject in school except religion and art. And the only reason I'm sure I passed those 2 subjects was that my dad's sister was one of the nuns that taught at the Catholic private school that I attended. And my dad helped me with every art class that I had. My dad helped me create what I needed to create. And I'm sure that's the only reason I passed those 2 subjects. So I really felt dumb at school. And in fact, some of my teachers told me that I was dumb and that I wouldn't amount to much. Back in those days, the old school reports come in. Amanda needs to focus more. Amanda needs to pay attention. Amanda struggles putting sentences together. Amanda struggles with this and that. And I remember my mum used to read out my school reports, and I would be sitting there feeling less than dirt. I mean, have you ever felt like that, where someone is talking about you to you? It might be a school report, or cast your mind back to when you went to school. Have you ever had that experience? And I remember always feeling less than. I always felt dowdy. I always felt dumb. And because of that environment, and thinking back to your environment, depending on who your parents were, where you were born, the schools you went to, the peers around you, your school teachers, your friends, your family, the environment, the country you were born in, the town you were born in, what you used to see on TV. This is all where our self-talk comes from. This is our what we call conditioning. And I realized when I cast my mind back that so many of these thoughts that I had were probably not even my thoughts. You know, they were ingrained in my mind from other people, from school teachers. So what happened then, I literally just wanted to get out of home. Being one of 5 kids, you know, I would have to do so many different chores and help mum bring up the other kids because they were younger than me. I'm the middle of 5, and I had a pretty tough upbringing, which I'm going to go into in other podcasts. It's not the core, it's not what I want to talk about today. But, you know, I just wanted to get out of home. I don't know what your upbringing was like, and it wasn't bad or anything like that. You know, we had a lot of love in our family, but it was really tough. And, you know, in my book, From Frustrated to Fabulous, which I wrote, I talk about my mother in my book and how as a child, my mum had a really fast hand, a quick hand, I'd say. And, you know, we'd get slapped around, and back in the 70s, because I'm in my 50s now, but back in the 70s, you know, that was the way it was. You know, in Tasmania, growing up in a normal town, mum and dad, you know, they had 5 kids. They were only in their 30s themselves. And if we were out of line, babe, we would get whacked. And I mean whacked hard. And, you know, from a young kid, I was always told that, you know, if you want anything, Amanda, you get out there and you work hard. And I remember thinking, that's not really my idea of a fabulous life. And I remember thinking that right back when I was about 15 years of age, when everybody was hearing the same thing. So cast your mind back. What did you hear growing up? What were you told by your parents, your teachers, your peers, your aunties and uncles, and things you saw on TV, and the people that you surrounded yourself with, religious ideas, or in the environment that you grew up in? And I remember thinking, well, that's not really my idea of happiness. I don't really want to find one guy, get married. And in fact, I didn't even want to have children. Well, the thought of it back then was, oh my God, I haven't even grown up myself. And so I really wanted to move out of home. And so at just 16 years of age, I literally packed up my VW Beetle. It was a 1969 little baby blue VW Beetle. You might remember them. And I packed everything I owned in that Beetle, and I moved out of home, and I went to stay with another family. I rented a little room, a little flatette it was called back in those days in the 80s, underneath the house. And I just said to myself and my mother, I have my own dreams. I don't want to fit into what you want me to be. Now, I understand that's a really hard thing for some people to say to their parents, but I was one of these kids that I was refusing to live by conformity. I was kind of like a rebel, I guess you'd say, but not in a bad way. But I just said, I just cannot allow my life to be like everybody else's. I just didn't want to be like that. And so after moving out of home, I had a lot of, you know, toxic talk going on. I didn't feel good about myself. And from there, I literally wandered from job to job to job. You know, have you ever had that feeling of trying to fit into society, yet at a deep level, you don't know what's wrong, but you just don't feel that everything is as it should be? I didn't have a clue about listening to my own inner guidance. I didn't have a clue about even thinking about what I wanted to do with my life, because I wasn't taught to think. I was taught to follow the herd, follow the crowd. Don't rock the boat, Amanda. You know, do what everybody else is doing. Have you ever been like that? Have you ever heard of that? Is that how you were brought up? Perhaps you were brought up in a completely different environment than me. However, I still know at a deep level that you would, like myself and everybody else out there, have this self-toxic talk going on. And so 33 jobs later, I literally changed jobs every 6 months, and I really just didn't like any one of them. And in fact, right up until the age when I was 25, I was running 3 different jobs, because when I was a child, I was also told by my parents, money doesn't grow on trees, Amanda, or what do you think I am, made of money? And my parents would always say to me, well, if you want something, you got to work hard. You know, you got to get up and work your fingers to the bone and earn a good day's wage and buy the stuff that you want. We're not going to give it to you. And so these are all the things going on in my mind. And so I would think, oh my God, everyone would laugh at me because I'd had 3 different jobs at once. I would do almost anything to make money. I would babysit. I would help my mum in her business because she did the books for my dad's business. She also had a kindergarten that I'd work there part-time. You name it, I did it. I literally was working my fingers to the bone. I was picking fruit and selling it to the neighbours. The great thing about Tasmania is we have a lot of beautiful vegetables and fruit. And so every waking moment, I was trying to earn money, trying to fit in because I just didn't know any different. And I was never really that happy, and people would laugh at me and they'd poke fun at me. And that's where the self-toxic talk started. I really believe I felt disempowered. I didn't feel attractive. You know, I was told I had to work really hard. I was told I wouldn't amount to much. And so it was coming from all different angles. And I don't think people realize back then, you know, I am talking about the 70s, and, you know, I don't think people realize back then what effect it can really have on a young person. And, you know, that is where our conditioning comes from. And so as you carry that through your life, these are the things, these are the thoughts that you have about yourself. And I remember growing up into my 20s, I still had these disempowering beliefs about myself. I'd look in the mirror and I wouldn't like the person that was staring back at me. I'd go for a job interview and I was already saying to myself, you're so dumb, you'll never get this job. You'd be at the lowest pay rung. Does any of this resonate with you? Have you had these emotions? Have you had these feelings about yourself, thinking back when you were a younger girl yourself or a younger guy? And that was the outcome that I always got. You know, the way I was thinking ended up becoming my reality, but I didn't understand how to change it. I just thought that was going to be me for the rest of my life. And that was not a good looking picture. In my mind, I'm thinking, is this all there is to life? Is this all I'm going to amount to? Nothing much, just like my school teachers said I would be. And then what happened is when I was 27 years of age, I beg your pardon, I moved from Tasmania up to Queensland because my parents had moved up here, brought my younger brother and my sister, and they came up to Queensland to make a better life for themselves. And so I followed them. And so from moving straight to Queensland, I had a different job. Again, the old pattern of jumping from job to job to job. Nothing was satisfying. Didn't like any one of my jobs. And then one day I decided that, you know, getting a job just wasn't for me. I wanted to be in control of my life. I wanted to start a business. And so I started 14 different businesses from then to who I am now. I'm in my 50s now. But going back, I just want to share a lesson with you. And this is what I want you to take away from this podcast today. A very, very important lesson that literally turned my life of toxic self-talk, my life of feeling frustrated, my life of feeling unworthy, not good enough, not pretty enough, you know, not intelligent enough to land the job that I wanted, to be anything else but on the lowest rung. I decided to become a personal trainer, and I enrolled in college, the Australian Institute of Fitness. This is back in the year 1999. And back in those days, I was really clueless about self-empowerment. In fact, to be truthful, I didn't even know what the word meant. I don't know if you know a lot about it or if and when you were introduced to it. However, I remember sitting in class one day studying to become a personal trainer. I was always very fit, I was always very healthy, and that's one of the wonderful things about my childhood is that I came from a background of health and fitness. Running was the sport that I did. And sitting in this classroom one day, and I was determined not to fail every subject. You know, that had been my history. And I was sitting at the front of the class. I was always at the front of the class with my eyes glued to the teacher, who was fabulous in my eyes. She seemed so confident. She was lovely. She just had this way about her, and she just oozed, you know, authenticity, confidence. She knew her stuff, and in my heart, I wanted to be her. I mean, have you ever sat there and watched someone full of confidence and just wish that was you? You know, wish that you could be that person that seemed to have it all worked out, seemed to have life in the palm of her hands. And I remember looking up at her, and she was talking about something to do with personal training. And then she shared this message with me, which was the first epiphany of my life that literally flipped it 360 degrees. I was going to say 180, but no, it was 360. And here's the message. I'd love you to write it down. She said, Amanda, life does not get better by chance. Life gets better by change. And if you don't like who you are, you don't like what life is for you right now, only you have the power to change it. And change begins with you. You are your best asset. You have the power within you to change your circumstances. Stop looking on the outside of other people, towards other people. Stop hoping and wishing and praying things were different. For your life to be different, it begins with you. Thinking different, learning to act different, learning to be more than you are now. In other words, changing that self-talk, changing your inner beliefs that are disempowering to new empowering beliefs. Well, I couldn't believe my ears, and I don't know if you've heard this before, and you may relate to me in some way, shape or form with a similar story that you've had. I literally couldn't believe it, and I was staring at her, and tears welled in my eyes and started streaming down my face, because I honestly knew in that moment that my life would never ever be the same again. I had no idea that I could control my destiny. I had no idea that I could empower myself, my mental state, my emotional state, my physical well-being, and become the woman that I wanted to be, to have the life that I truly wanted. And it was just it had such a massive impact for me. I can remember it like it was yesterday. And in that moment, I made a decision, just in a heartbeat. It was just like that I would never ever allow myself to be the person that I had been in that past, 30 years. I was actually 33 years of age by then. And I made a commitment in that moment that I was going to change my thinking, become empowered, change my beliefs, and learn about myself. And so from there, it was this journey of self-discovery, a journey of empowerment, and discovering my own gifts, my own talents, and who I wanted to be. And I could tell in that moment that life would never be the same again. And I just felt lighter. And, you know, from this podcast, I would love you to write down 3 things that you have just learned from me sharing this short story about my life so far. And I've got so much to share with you of how perhaps you can turn your life around. What is your self-toxic talk going on? Are you empowered, or do you feel disempowered? Where do you feel, I guess, out of control in your life? Which of the 7 areas? Remember, the 7 areas are your love life. And I always say love begins with self. You can't expect or attract love from another human being until you learn to love who you are. You see, the thing that I've learned over my 30 years, I guess, of it's how am I now? I'm in my 50th. I'm 53 today. Well, not today, it's not my birthday, but I'm 53. So 23 years of studying personal empowerment. I have learnt to accept myself, love who I am as a person. And what I've discovered is we don't need fixing. You don't need fixing. What you need is just better understanding about who you are. And so I invite you to come along on this journey of self-discovery, self-love, and it begins with this second podcast. And if you stick with me, every single week I am going to share with you potent and very powerful, empowering lessons and stories, my stories and other people's stories. I'm going to be interviewing incredibly successful people that are my mentors. I have invested hundreds of thousands of dollars over the past 23 years to become who I am today, to have the life that I always wanted. And I think the outcome for G'day Gorgeous podcast is to help you create your life by design, a life that you absolutely can't wait to get up and live every single day. You know, attract love into your life, have amazing relationships, have, you know, incredible health and well-being. You know, if you want to attract money and have wealth in your life, I'll help you how to do that. That's, you know, it's all about how you think, who you are as a person. Have more happiness. However, it comes down to personal empowerment and growth. And it begins today, one step at a time, one day at a time. And as they say, gorgeous, Rome wasn't built in a day. And this doesn't have to be overwhelming. It can be little tiny bite sizes. And so that's what I'd love you to think about until I meet you again on our next podcast, same time next week. And think about your life right now. And think about all of the wonderful things that you are already amazing at. Remember, this is not about fixing you. It's just helping you go from feeling frustrated to feeling fabulous and successful in all 7 areas of your life, because you deserve it, gorgeous. So I want to say thank you for joining me on my G'day Gorgeous podcast. The show notes are below, and if you want to find out more, gdaygorgeous.com is the website. I'm Amanda Jane Clarkson, and if you haven't already got a copy of my book, From Frustrated to Fabulous, which I wrote from my heart to your heart, this book is full of stories, inspiration, amazing and potent life success lessons, which are all formed around my Live Now Freedom Formula, which over this podcast journey together, I am going to go into depth. But hopefully today, and I'm sure you would, take 2 or 3 little tips and ideas and possibilities, because I want you to feel hopeful. I want you to feel enthusiastic and inspired by your life to create that life by design that I know you are going to live and love every single day. So gorgeous, again, I just want to say thanks so much for listening in to the G'day Gorgeous podcast. And if you love this episode and know somebody else who would also love to go from feeling frustrated to fabulous and successful in any and all of the 7 areas of life. Remember, those 7 areas are love, health, relationships, money, which I love to talk about and we all want more of but don't seem to have enough of, your vocation, your job, career or business that is, happiness, and the most important, personal growth, then please let them know to subscribe to the G'day Gorgeous podcast. It would absolutely mean the world to me if you would help me create what I love to call the butterfly effect by sharing this message and my mission to as many women around the world as we can together. So please, if you liked what you heard and you found value in this particular lesson, I would be forever grateful if you would take just 30 seconds of your time and leave me a 5-star review and share this with your friends. As I said, I'll be forever appreciative and so will your friends. Okay, gorgeous, until next time, take care with love and gratitude. As always, I'll see you on the next podcast. Bye for now.